Good evening. Now I would like to request our honorable chairpersons, Dr. T.N. Ghosh. He is the retired professor of general medicine, IPGMER, sir, and Dr. Shorajit Bonik, sir, assistant professor of North Bengal Medical College. Sir, would you kindly grace the podium? I would like to request you, sir, to please welcome our learned speaker.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks to the organizer for asking me to chair this session. Today's subject is leukocytosis and leukopenia. It is an overview lecture. As you know, in our clinical practice, we see leukocytosis very often, but leukopenia a little bit less than that. Leukocytosis particularly is seen in infections and the corticosteroid use and the other things. And in leukopenia, there is definite bone marrow involvement or maybe autoimmune disease or infectious disease, the sarcoidosis and the other diseases. We would like to hear from Professor R.K. Jena from Koto to start his speech. Because that, I would request my chairperson to say the biodata of Professor R.K. Jena.
Professor R.K. Jena is the professor and head of the Department of Hematology in SCB Medical College, Kotok, and he is the secretary of Odisha Hematology and a well-known face in the field of hematology. And I request sir to please start your deliberation.
Respected chairperson, ladies and gentlemen, at the outset, I must extend my sincere thanks to the Dean of the FPI, Professor Jyotirmoy Paul, and the Indian College of Physicians, West Bengal branch, for giving me this wonderful opportunity to speak on a very common clinical entity, that is leukocytosis and leukopenia, and overview. My flow of the presentations will be introduction, etiology, differential diagnosis, approach to certain clinical cases, real cases, and then conclusion. To introduce this subject of leukocytosis and leukopenia, you know, leukocytes, they constitute three broad categories. One is granulocyte, which includes neutrophil, eosinophil, and basophil. And the second is monocyte, third is lymphocyte. So granulocyte, monocyte, and lymphocytes, they constitute the entire leukocyte. If we go for the dynamics of these leukocytes, how the leukocytes have formed and the complete metabolism and their control of the numbers, they are usually formed in the bone marrow stem cells. They are usually short-lived. They live only for a few hours. So there is a quite even balance between the productions and the removal or unpulped destruction. And their production and they are being regulated by cytokines, transmission factors, infections, inflammatory conditions, and there may be some genetical abnormality which can give rise to dysregulation of the formations in particularly neoplastic diseases. And so it is a combination, the balance between all these factors. They try to maintain a normal count of leukocytes, and in certain physiological and pathological conditions, the counts can increase or counts can decrease depending on these factors. The leukocytosis is defined when the total WBC count is more than 11,000 per cubic millimeter. On the contrary, leukopenia when the WBC count is less than 4,000 per cubic millimeter. The lymphocytosis is defined when the absolute lymphocyte count is more than 3,500 per cubic millimeter. If I enumerate the causes of acute neutropenia, I will go right very quickly because these are all there in the textbook. One of the common causes is acute infections, which includes bacterial, fungal, rickettsial, spirochetal, and viral infection. Then second category of the causes are inflammation or tissue necrosis. Any inflammatory condition, or if there is any tissue necrosis from any region, whether it is traumatic, infective, or surgical, whatever may be the cause for tissue necrosis. So this also can lead to acute neutropenia. Acute neutropenia means if the neutropenia is a duration within 3 months. The causes include burn, electric shock, trauma, myocardial infarction, gout, vasculitis, antigen antibody complexes, complement activation. The third category is physical or emotional stimuli that includes cold, heat, exercise, convulsion, pain, labor, anesthesia, surgery, severe stress. The fourth category is various drugs, hormones, and toxins. The common examples are epinephrine, etocolamine, endotoxin, glucocorticoids, venoms, vaccines, and colony stimulatory factors. And last category is acute myeloid leukemia. It is a primary hematological neoplastic condition. If you look at the causes of acute neutropenia, you find a majority of the causes, quite a good number, quite the majority fraction belongs to the secondary causes. I mean the primary etiology is somewhere else, means not related to hematology. And the minority of the cases, they can be hematology related conditions. The causes of chronic neutropenia means when the duration is more than 3 months, they include the chronic infection, tuberculosis, viral, etc. Again, the chronic inflammatory conditions, various tumors, few drugs, hormones, and toxins, metabolic and endocrinological disorders. Hematological disorders, we'll call it chronic leukemia, myeloproliferative neoplasms like that. There can be another entity, we call it hereditary and congenital disorders. And the last is chronic idiopathic neutropenia. Even also in few cases, even if you do the entire investigation, you may not be able to find any cause. They are usually benign, categorized at chronic idiopathic neutropenia. These are the causes of the chronic neutropenia. Similarly, the causes of the lymphocytes I have categorized. They have a broadly two groups of etiology. One is reactive lymphocytes, means it's a physiological stimuli to the primary etiology somewhere else. There is other primary diseases. In response to that, you have a lymphocytosis. Second is a lymphoproliferative disorder. Here the primary etiology is confined to the stem cell or the cells producing the lymphocytes. They are usually hematological diseases. So these are two broad groups because to differentiate the causes of lymphocytosis. So reactive lymphocytosis, otherwise called secondary lymphocytosis, the causes include various viral infections, bacterial infections, toxoplasma, malaria, babesiosis. There are few drugs, hypersensitivity, autoimmune diseases. We have many collagen vascular diseases and autoimmune diseases due to cytokines, vaccines, smoking, stress of any region like traumatic, cardiac, extreme exercise, and endocrine disorders. If these primary etiology are of this cancer nature, there can be reactive lymphocytes. Means it's a physiological stimuli to the primary etiology. The lymphocytes can be increased. If you look at the lymphoproliferative, when the primary etiology is confined to the hematology or to the bone marrow or the hematological diseases, the common causes are chronic lymphatic leukemia, the B polylymphocytoid leukemia, splenic marginal zone lymphoma, hairy cell lymphoma, mantle cell lymphoma, Burkitt's lymphoma, large cell lymphoma, follicular lymphoma, and acute lymphoblastic leukemia. These are all the lymphoproliferative disorders or all lymphatic leukemia. They are the causes of the lymphoproliferative disorders. In this way, the causes of lymphocytes is clearly broadly divided into reactive lymphocytosis and lymphoproliferative disorders. And it has a significance, clinical significance, because the management differs. Here, you have to address the primary etiology or the systemic diseases or the etiology or the predisposing factors which has given rise to reactive lymphocytosis. Here, on lymphoproliferative disorders who are confined to the your stem cell or the hematopoiesis, you need a specific therapy addressing to each clinical entity. That's the way how fundamentally the management differs from the causes of lymphocytosis, whether it's a reactive lymphocytosis or lymphoproliferative disorder. So neutropenia hemostasis, let's look at how in a physiological condition, the hemostasis of neutrophil occurs. It has a 3 level of, the neutrophil count is controlled at 3 levels. So far the hemostasis is concerned. First, there is production site at bone marrow. Usually it can be increased due to the physiological conditions which I have already enumerated, infections, stressful conditions, etc. There can be various pathological conditions also confined to the bone marrow stem cells which can give rise to a neutrophil abnormality in the hemostasis of the neutrophil. Similarly, the second step is once the neutrophil is produced in the bone marrow, the second step is released from the bone marrow to the blood. And that depends on chemokines, cytokines, microbial products, inflammatory mediators. They all help, they all enhance the release of the stem, the release of the neutrophil from the bone marrow at the site of the production to the peripheral blood circulation, where we estimate the neutrophil count. And from the blood, these neutrophils are cleared by these liver, spleen, bone marrow. We call it as a reticular endothelial system. And the median half-life or the median survival time for the neutrophil is only few hours, 6 to 3 years. That means that every day crores of the neutrophil are produced, and crores of the neutrophil are also eliminated from the circulation by these liver, spleen, and bone marrow, so that a normal hemostasis level is maintained in the physiological conditions by all these factors. If there occurs any imbalance between the production or release from the bone marrow to the blood, or clearance from the blood, either increase or decrease, here either increase or decrease, here either increase or decrease, the neutrophil count will actually or gradually or will either increase or decrease depending on the abnormality and depending on the net effect of all these three principal parameters which are responsible for the neutrophil hemostasis. That's the way how the hemostasis of neutrophil occurs in physiological condition. How then the question, how to approach a case of leukocytosis? First step, if a physician come across a case of leukocytosis, the first step is you confirm whether it is a real leukocytosis or there is a spurious elevation of the WBC count. You know, now there's 99% of this, even the laboratory hematologists, the clinicians, they see the report produced by the cell counter. The cell counter has given a high TLC count. So you have to differentiate whether it is a real, genuine leukocytosis, that is spurious elevation of WBC count. Falsely or spurious elevation of WBC count by the cell counter will be known or will happen when there is a nucleated RBC. You know, there are many situations like hemolytic anemia, other conditions, infections, even in the pediatric patients also. There may be nucleated RBC or incomplete lysis of the RBC, there is hemolysis of the RBC. Platelet clumps increasing in size to and WBC and cryoglobin, they all will appear as a WBC and will confuse as a WBC count with the cell count. This can be differentiated by looking at peripheral blood smear review. If you look at the peripheral blood smear, you can exactly tell whether the leukocytosis as shown in the cell counter is a genuine one or is a spurious one, and what may be possible cause by looking at the peripheral smear and examining. So the first point is confirm whether the leukocytosis is a genuine or spurious. The second important step is to differentiate whether that there is a genuine leukocytosis. Then you have to differentiate whether it's a myeloid versus lymphoid or there is increased blast, because the management depends on accordingly. So for myeloid cells are concerned, you have a neutrophil, eosinophils, basophil, monocyte. So for lymphoid cells are there, that's another category. If it's a immature myeloid cells, which can be myeloblast, promyelocyte, myelocyte, or metamyelocytes, they can appear in the peripheral blood also. And another fourth category is lymphoblast. So while examining the peripheral blood smear, or a clinician can ask his laboratory colleagues, hematologists, to tell us whether it's a myeloid, lymphoid, or increased blast, whether it's a myeloblast or lymphoblast, or what are the cell stages of the immature myeloid cells, or if it's a mature myeloid cells, whether it's a neutrophil, eosinophil, basophil, monocyte. Then I'll give some of the examples of the blood picture, how the picture looks and how it is simple to differentiate whatever I have told in the point number 2. These are the adult, these are the mature neutrophil. These are the small dots looks like a platelet, they are platelet. So this is a case of the neutrophilia, mainly of a mature neutrophil. So accordingly, the diagnosis is clear, it is a neutrophilia. Then you have to search for the possible causes of the mature neutrophil. Second is how the acute leukemia look. These are the blast cells, these are the nucleoli, very thin rim of the cytoplasm. The platelet, there is paucity of the platelet. You don't find any platelet in this peripheral smear. How this acute leukemia looks like. Third is, this is a eosinophil. These are bioluminescent cells, coarse brick red granules. This is how a eosinophilia looks like, eosinophilia. And fourth is, look, this is a lymphocytosis. These are the platelet count is adequate. count is increased. Look at these are lymphocytes. If you look at the structure of the lymphocytes, they look like monomorphic, means size, shape, appearance are similar to each other. Had it been a polymorphic, you find the size shapes will be different, will have a multiple size and shapes. That's it. It has a clinical importance because if it's a monomorphic, means you do one size, shape, and one appearance, probably it's a clonal abnormality, means abnormality lies with the lymphoproliferative. If it's a polyclonal, if it's a polymorphic, it's probably of a secondary or a reactive lymphocytosis. So from examining the peripheral smear, you can not only tell whether it's a genuine leukocytosis is spurious, even you can differentiate whether it is a mature neutrophil, abnormal blast cells, or eosinophil, or it's a monoclonic, or it's a monomorphic lymphoid cells. So the examination of the broad picture is very, very important in approaching a case of leukocytosis or leukopenia. So broad smear is the key. After the clinical examination, history and detailed findings, broad smear is the key, which will give you a lot of important information how to proceed further. Then third point is you have to differentiate between reactive, which is called secondary to the other primary diseases, versus primary or proliferative hematological abnormalities. Primary means it's a hematological abnormality, it's usually proliferative one, and the reactive means secondary. The primary etiology is other than the bone marrow, other than the hematology. The reaction to the primary etiology, the count or the count has increased. So this is called a reactive leukocytosis. This is very, very important. Every clinician, every physician to know with a very common clinical entity or knowledge exposure approach, you will be able to differentiate between whether it is a reactive or primary. That's the important step so far the physicians are concerned. How to differentiate between the reactive lymphocytosis versus lymphoproliferative disorder? I have already told you it's pleomorphic versus monomorphic. If the size and shapes of the lymphocytes are one size called monomorphic, pleomorphic means multiple size, shapes, and structures. If it's a younger age group, features of the you have a primary disease, suppose you have a tuberculosis, you have a collagen vascular disease, you have a lymphadenopathy. So the features of you have a clear-cut primary disease. So younger age group, features of a primary disease and pleomorphic, they support the diagnosis of a reactive lymphocytosis. While if with a lymphoproliferative, if with a monomorphic, you have a organomegaly, lymphocytosis, symptoms, etc., then it probably suggests it could be lymphoproliferative. That can be confirmed by flow cytometry, looking at the immunophenotyping structure and which are there in the surface of these lymphocytes, doing the bone marrow examination, cytogenetic study by FISH, and various molecular studies. They will confirm the clonality of that lymphocytosis, and they will indicate probably it's a lymphoproliferative disorder and exact diagnosis which category of the lymphoproliferative disorder it belongs. So this is one of the most important entity to differentiate whether it's a reactive lymphocytosis or it is a proliferative one. So clonality is indicates to one of the important, so looking or confirming the clonality by the flow cytometer, cytogenetics, and molecular study, that indicates the probably it's a proliferative etiology. Then the same category you have to differentiate between on the category. Third step, I have already discussed in the third step, whether the reactive myelopoiesis versus proliferative. Same principle. Presence of the primary etiology other than the hematological diseases, they indicate probably it's a reactive myelopoiesis. The presence of blast cell, immature cell morphology, you have to confirm that indicates probably it's a proliferative disorder or primarily hematological diseases. And the proliferative etiology can be confirmed by the bone marrow evaluation, flow cytometer, cytogenetics, molecular studies, which like that of lymphocytes also. So clonality is the key to differentiate whether it's a reactive myelopoiesis or proliferative etiology, both in lymphocytosis and myelopoiesis. A few examples how the molecular test really help not only cleanses the diagnosis but also confirms the clonality, it's a proliferative disorder, and gives you the diagnosis and cleanses with 100% accuracy. You are aware of the fact that BCR aerial presents by real-time PCR is the diagnostic of chronic myeloid leukemia. Similarly, pML-RARA by real-time PCR, the diagnosis of acute promyelocytic leukemia, irrespective of morphology and etc. Similarly, if you have a JAK2 mutation, CALR mutation, MPL mutations, they indicate probably it's a chronic myeloproliferative neoplasm. If it's a VRAF B600 gene mutation, indicates it not only indicates it's a diagnostic of hairy cell leukemia. Similar MID88 gene mutation, diagnosis of Waldenstrom's macroglobulinemia. And if there is a 5q deletion, monozobi 7q deletions, they indicate myelodysplastic syndrome. There are many such cases, many such examples where the hemato-oncological diseases can be confirmed its clonality, not only diagnosis, but also its clonality. So these I just give you only 6 examples, which I am sure most of the physicians are aware. So hematology at present is molecular driven, not only from the confirmation, even from a risk stratification, even follow-up during the management also. So eosinophilia is defined as if it is more than 1500 per cubic millimeter. I am sure eosinophilia is a very common entity so far physicians are concerned. Similarly, it can be broadly divided with the reactive or primarily proliferative. And then the presence of organomegaly, you go for bone marrow evaluation, and molecular studies indicating all the genetic mutations. They indicate probably it's a primary proliferative, which needs the treatment specifically. If it's a reactive eosinophilia, treat the primary etiology, maybe with the adjuvant therapy, steroids, etc. And that eosinophilia will come down. That's how the approach of the case of eosinophilia is concerned. Now with this, now the cases of neutrophilia, I'll give you a few real case stories, how a neutrophilia case were approached. Case number 1, male 45 years, irregular low-grade fever for 2 months, anemia mild, splenomegaly 3 centimeter. It's a stable condition, rather stable condition. On the cell counter, the leukocytes were 60,800 per cubic millimeter with predominantly a neutropenia. So the differential diagnosis in this case comes like to infective conditions, inflammatory conditions, and probably it could be also a myeloproliferative disorder. How to differentiate? Look at that. They are all stable. Had it been infective condition, inflammatory condition, you will have find some kind of a toxic feature, some kind of a difficulty in those so far the general health is concerned. You won't be patient, won't be stable. And secondly, if you go for if you estimate the procalcitonin or CRP, they will indicate probably it's infective condition, or if that CRP is increased, you can probably it's because they are non-specific markers of inflammatory condition. So the key is that we did the peripheral examination. We have found that these are all platelets are of the normal count. You find the TLC or the WBC is increased, and there is all stages of maturation. You have a myeloblast here, you have a myelocyte, you have a metamyelocyte here, you have a neutrophil, you have a basophil, all stages starting from the myeloblast, promyelocytic, myelocyte, metamyelocyte, and the platelet count is well preserved. That's a classic picture of the chronic myeloid leukemia. Today, you can't diagnose the chronic myeloid leukemia without going for bone marrow study where you have a myeloid hyperplasia of the left sheet, means the predominant shapes are immature cells, and that the BCR ABL by real time PCR will be positive. That's the diagnosis which I have already told. With these features, we put a diagnosis of chronic myeloid leukemia. Simple and straightforward. Now, case number 2, neutropenia, female 40 years,
Sir, your
right
time
from
is up, sir.
with septicemia, antibiotics and short course of steroids, supportive, recovered, no organomegaly lymphadenopathy. After 2 weeks of recovery, patient is absolutely stable condition. But however, his TLC count is persistently high, 48,000 with absolute neutrophil count 36,000. The peripheral blood smear we examined, there is no abnormal cells. The neutrophils were predominantly immature neutrophils without any toxic granules. Here it indicates how to approach. This is a very common clinical setting, which I'm sure many of my physicians friends might be facing. The approach will be this looks like an effect of infection steroid, though it wins out after the clinical condition, after the pneumonia improves or resolves. But in certain cases, so this is the myeloid or the stimulation of the myeloid cell lines persist for a few more days, for a long time also. Second, no further evaluation is required because the patient is stable conditions. There is no abnormal cell, no hurry to evaluate anything.
Your video.
No further evaluation. Just give an answer. Wait for a few more days. Re-evaluate. I am sure the patient will be all right. So for this clinical scenario, you don't have to any further evaluation. Assurance is the only thing. Okay, only thing which you can advise. Case number 3, middle-aged man, low-grade fever, generalized lymphocyte, TLC count was 65,000 per cubic millimeter. They're all mature-looking small lymphocytes. Absolute lymphocyte count was.
Sir, due to paucity of time, we have to. Yeah, we have to wind up, sir. Because of paucity of time, and also we are running late by almost 55 minutes. and it's almost 23 minutes, sir. So, and your video is almost 38 minutes video. So we have to stop the video and we can ask for 1 or 2 questions from the audience because we have many audience here. So Dr. Jena, are you
Yeah,
here?
yeah, I'm on the line. I'm sorry, it's because of I was given probably 30 minutes. I didn't know it's 25 plus 5. Anyway, I can
Yes,
take
sir.
up some of the questions or comments. That's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
One question to you, sir. It's an excellent lecture. I'm just asking you, what is the pathogenesis of leukocytosis in diabetic ketoacidosis and after a status epilepticus?
Look, so but I told you, it is not a primary hematological diseases and that can be secondary. It's a secondary to your diabetes ketoacidosis. All depends on any stressful condition. If there is infections or any stressful condition, you can have a leukocytosis also. So for the diabetes and ketoacidosis is concerned. And so for epilepsy is concerned, I told you, there is no link of any myeloid proliferation. So for epilepsy is concerned, suppose you have epilepsy, you have a chronic convulsion, stressful condition, any stressful conditions that can stimulate the myeloid production inside the marrow and it can lead to leukocytosis. But they are all preliminarily, they are primarily secondary leukocytosis. You have to address the primary etiology and hopefully it will come down.
No other question. Thank you, Professor Jena, for your excellent explanation.
Okay, thank you. Again, I am sorry for my long video. I could have made it shorter also. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much.